All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Young Scholars webinar. No more summer slide, simple ways to keep your middle schooler engaged. We are very excited to have you here today. And while we give a few more attendees a moment to connect, I'd love to introduce myself and share a few quick announcements before we officially get started. So, my name is Kyla Evans, and I am the Marketing Optimization Coordinator here at Young Scholars and NSHSS, and it's a true pleasure to help kick things off today and welcome you. Now, turning to today's session, before we dive in, I have a few quick housekeeping reminders. This webinar is being recorded, and everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording by email afterwards. So if you miss anything or want to revisit the session, you'll have the opportunity. That said, we do encourage you to stay with us live because this is your chance to ask questions directly to our host. And since this is a Zoom webinar, your cameras and microphones are off by default, but you can participate at any time using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to type in your questions throughout the event, and towards the end, we will have a live Q&A session. And now, I'm thrilled to introduce your host for today's session. Melissa Decker is the Chief Consultant and founder of R.A.C.E Consulting, LLC. With a passion to help high school families, she uses her 20 plus years of teaching, administrative, and academic advising experience to relieve families that are overwhelmed with all stages of the high school and college admissions experience with a guided relationship to meet the students' needs. Outside of her professional life, Melissa has been married to her high school sweetheart for 23 years, and her two children, Cole and Kylie, are proud University of Georgia students. When she's not guiding students towards their academic goals, you'll find Melissa enjoying the outdoors, playing tennis, crafting handmade cards, or diving into a good book. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Melissa.
Thanks so much, Kyla. I am thrilled to be back here for my second webinar on the Young Scholars Program. So thank you again for asking me to join you and your families. Parents, students, it's so nice to have you here. I hope everyone has had an awesome start to their summer, or those of you that are still wrapping up school, I hope that that comes to an end and finds you some joy and some relief. So being said, that is why our topic is we want to talk about how do we avoid this summer slide, right? So I came up with 4 agenda items, and we're going to go through these one by one and just talk through them. And again, like Kyla said, please feel free to ask any questions you have for our Q&A. So the first thing I want to address is how do we keep our kids engaged? It's super important that we are doing stuff this summer, but not overdoing it. Number 2, what about some summer volunteering opportunities? Have we thought about that as middle school families? Number 3, what are the simple academic routines that keep us on top of our toes with our skills, but yet not overdoing it? And last but not least, we're going to share with you some scholarship opportunities. So we want to make you aware that middle school families do have that opportunity just like high schoolers. So, what is summer slide? What do we mean by this word summer slide? I think the overarching theme that you're going to hear in my presentation tonight is balance. So, that's our magic word. We need to find balance between rest and staying fresh with our academics. So, when I describe to you summer slide, I think of 3 things. The first thing that comes to mind is academic regression. Unfortunately, I think the big 2 subjects that we always seem to talk about over the summer needing help is reading and math. So it's important that we find some time to put this up front. Keep this on our brains because it's possible that our kiddos can lose some skills. They can lose their math facts, right? We see this and we don't want that to happen. And when they go back to school, we'd like to stay on top of it. The second thing about summer slide is that we need to address the loss of routine. Who doesn't have those students that love to sleep in, right? Or maybe it's staying up late at night. So now they're kind of in their unstructured environment and they've become a little too relaxed, right? So we have that hard transition in the fall back to school. So we want to kind of stop that as well. And then the third thing would be disengagement. Unfortunately, this is probably the biggest issue that we might not think to address. We know that our students become disengaged with academics for obvious reasons, right? They're not going to school, but we also see it with their peers. They tend to just want to stay at home and be disengaged with the outside world. And so we want to make sure we're monitoring that and finding a good balance. So, parents, I don't know about you, but I fell into this trap once in my life with my kiddos. We want to make our kids happy, right? We want ourselves to be happy as parents in the summertime. And finding that joy can put us in this little trap, right? We have option number one. Let's fill every week with camps and programs and events and things to do. And like I mentioned, I fell right into that trap when my kids were younger. We went to the library, we went on play dates, we went to the puppet shows, and I literally made a calendar with every day jam-packed. And guess what I found out? We were all tired. Every day we were tired, every end of summer we were exhausted, and I don't want that for anybody. The second option is okay, let's let them just relax all summer. Let's just do whatever we want and not worry about academics or structure. And guess what? Neither one of these options is going to work well for any of us, right? Students and parents alike. So the goal isn't to do more and to fill our days, but rather that word I said earlier, balance. So let's talk about it. What's a more realistic goal for our summer? What does that look like, parents? So instead of our students having to play catch up, because we do know some of our students could use that extra academic structure, or we have those students that we find need some extra to get ahead. They're just needing that challenge. And so we want to find a balance. How do we do this with some realistic goals, but not overdo it? So instead of that mentality of getting ahead or trying to catch up, let's try to maintain our skills. So again, in those subject areas, we could talk about math facts being practiced. We could read a short story every day. We could journal. And these are all opportunities for us to maintain those skills. We also should encourage our students to become more independent. Why not over the summer, right? So ask them to be involved in making dinner. Maybe they make the menu. Maybe they decide on what we need to go to the grocery store for. Have them be involved. Or a simple one, keep your room clean, help with the chores around the house. Just giving them that little bit of structure is going to help them in that transition later on. And then lastly, I would love for us to have a realistic goal of just trying new things. Why not encourage your son or daughter to try a new sport they've never thought to try? Maybe it's tennis or pickleball or something just they've never thought about. Or how about meeting some new sets of friends? Maybe they met somebody at school they've never hung out with outside of school. Give it a shot. Or maybe you've encouraged them to start a hobby at home, something cheap and easy that's just laying around the house they pull out. But this is the best time to do that, parents. This summer, why not try it? So, this magic word of balance, right? We want to talk about having a balance framework. And I have put two important topics or two important items that make up the balance framework, and that's rest and that's productivity. So, with rest, I'm defining that as downtime, social time, unstructured play, just giving them mindless activities, just letting them sit and be chill, if you will. And then on the flip side, we really do need some productivity, right? We want to be productive with a little light structure. Maybe there's some skill building involved. How about that exposure to those activities or new sports? Maybe it's volunteering or an academic subject that needs that little bit of help to get them ready for the fall. These are all important things with the balance framework. But here's the thing, parents. We have to make sure that we're balancing it across the week. We don't want to just balance every day. We need to make sure the week is balanced because it can get out of control, like I said, with filling things up before we know it. So let's talk about keeping our kids engaged because I don't know, maybe you're sitting there thinking, oh boy, Melissa, now we've got all these ideas, but we need to make sure my kid is doing something or staying engaged. So what does that actually look? So the magic formula, if you will, is important to have engagement that equals participation and ownership. When we involve them, when we ask them to participate in the discussion, in the decision, as well as that activity, now they have owned it, right? So we want to encourage them to be curious. We want them to be involved in the whole process. What we don't want is, guess what? No complaining, right? We don't want them constantly complaining about going to practice or having to get up. So again, involving them is going to eliminate that. We also don't want to see them zoned out on their screens all day, right? We want them to put away their technology and get on to doing something else. So, like I said, when we want them to understand what engagement is, we know that we can teach them that they have to be willing to participate and they have to own part of that decision to be engaged. Again, it's an example of like, I want to go to practice. They want to say that and not just be whining about, I have to go. So I've created 3 buckets. Let's consider this. So students, I would love your help. Give mom and dad some ideas in these 3 buckets to help balance out your summer. Okay, so bucket number 1, let's consider our experiences. This might be volunteering, this might be going to some camps, or this might be some family outings. Maybe they're day trips or weekend trips, or maybe it's your family vacation. The second bucket is skill building. We want to have those academic skills inside this bucket as well as some life skills, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the last bucket I've created is just rest and fun, right? We want those social activities to be in this bucket, the hobbies that they have found, and just having some downtime is going to be in that bucket as well. So again, I would encourage your family to have a conversation together, coming up with some examples of each of the buckets. What are some experiences you can put in that bucket? What are some rest and fun activities you can do in that bucket? Because it's important that you have that conversation and kind of lay it out together. So that bucket also had summer volunteering. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does that look like? Middle schoolers might think, well, I don't volunteer. I'm too young. I can't do that. No organization's going to allow me to come in. And that's so far from the truth, guys. So by asking our middle schoolers to volunteer, we're actually giving them some responsibility without academic pressure, right? We're building that in them. We're also helping our kids feel useful. And what parent doesn't want that, right? We want our kids to go to an organization and feel a win when they volunteer and they know that they have been used in a good way to serve the community. It also gives our kids some early exposure to their interests. I work with high school students in my business, and when I see students that have been volunteering since middle school, it actually helps me write their story with them for college admissions because now they've been working on their passions and they've been working through their interests through middle school and serving. And so then it just becomes apparent of what they love and what they enjoy. So that's such a win. So, how do we find these volunteering activities? How do we get these ideas between our kids to have that conversation? So, just do a simple internet search. You can find opportunities searching in your area. I also love to use social media because that's another great place where you might just see some little one-offs. Sometimes they just put like a day event or last minute volunteer opportunity. I've seen that as well. So some activities that I have thought up is the volunteering at the library. You would be surprised, but sometimes they'll let you read to the little toddlers in the reading room. Or maybe it's an animal shelter. I once took my daughter there to volunteer in middle school, and believe it or not, her job was to pet the cats. And so she spent 2 hours once a month petting cats, and she loved it. So why not, right? Then you've got your food pantries and your thrift stores. They're always looking for volunteers to help them sort through their donations. Then I've also seen community events be popular. You've got 5K races that are ran around the holidays or especially in the summer. Maybe your son or daughter could hand out the bananas or the waters at the end of the race. The local market or craft fair that's going to occur, and you get to set up tables and tents ahead of the event. These are all opportunities that you can find on the internet or social media. And then there's always you and your child coming up with a family-led service project. What better way than to do it as a family, talk about it, plan it, create it, and just do whatever makes you guys happy. That idea that pours into you and makes your family dynamic see the value of volunteering together. So maybe it's a book drive or you collect some shoes for an organization that needs them. But again, it's the ability to come together as a family and do all the aspects of a family project. Of course, when volunteering, guys, we need to make sure we keep it manageable. So don't overdo it, right? We know that 1 to 2 times a week might be doable for some families, but maybe it's every other week. I know when we volunteered as a family, it was once a month, and that was what we could fit in with our schedule, and that's okay. So just do what's best for your family. There's also the ability to do short shifts. Oftentimes, the age of middle schoolers is better in a 1 or 2 hour shift. So don't be discouraged by that. If you're looking for a whole day event, it might actually benefit you to go shorter. And then don't be afraid to let your child help choose where you're going to serve. So maybe you come up with those ideas or those events, and then you ask them, hey, what would you like to do? What interests you? Because again, that's how we get them to buy in, right? We also have in our bucket that academic piece. So let's talk about that. What does a simple academic routine look like that doesn't overdo it, but doesn't underestimate what we need to accomplish over the summer without that summer slide? So let's acknowledge that we have some skills that might be lacking or that just need to be kept up with, right? So we don't forget them. And that's okay because we want to address it and stay on top of it. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to overdo it. We know that kids do not need hours of daily work. That's proven in research. So let's be mindful of how much we ask them to do each day. So I come up with these activities with the thought of reading, writing, and math being those subjects that tend to give us problems, right? We see students struggling the most with them. So, in reading, let's encourage our students to have a choice when they're reading. Maybe they pick a book that you think is too hard for them or maybe too easy. It's okay. Let's let them have that pleasure reading that's going to benefit them just as much. So, don't be so strict on maybe the level of the reading. I'd also encourage you to read a book together. That's always fun. Or how about writing? Writing, we can come up with some ideas with journals. We can do some creative prompts to make them thinking, get them thinking. And then we could also do some real life writing. Let's go on a hike and then we come back and we write about what we saw. Or maybe it was family vacation and now we're going to journal about it when we get home. And with math, let's just do some short, consistent review, right? Math skills are always good, time tests, or maybe it's focusing on a concept that your son or daughter had really struggled with last year and you just want to keep working on fractions, for example. That would be a good place to work on that. So again, what is the balance with this academic routine? What are we talking about? So I want you to put it into perspective. 20 to 30 minutes a day is all we should really be doing. That is enough for students at this age and in the summer to be doing academics. So for example, let's pick reading. Maybe on Mondays, I'm going to choose to do reading with my son or daughter. And then we're going to pick a different day after only doing 20 or 30 minutes on Monday of reading. Maybe I say on Tuesday, we're going to write as a follow-up to the story we read. So now on Tuesday is my reading, or sorry, my writing day. Again, 20 to 30 minutes max. And then my third day of the week for academics, let's say it's Friday. We're going to do some math practice. So I just want to emphasize one more time, it's focusing on one subject at a time. Let's let it just be one at a time because then they can really hone in on it and it can make sense a little better to them. I also love life skills, and I think that this is the perfect opportunity when we're doing some academic routines in our week during the summer that we can work on some of these as well. So, why don't you consider the following as important to practice as well? Maybe some organization. Maybe it's having them come up with the calendar or the times that they're going to work on, which leans into time management, right? And so, we're showing them what that looks like over the summer. And we could also teach them a little bit of independence, maybe with the planning of their week or the responsibility of, well, when do we need to leave the house to get you to practice on time or to that new sport that we're going to try out? So this leads me into our last topic, which is scholarships. So we want to do some scholarship awareness for you, very low pressure, because we sometimes wonder, well, why in the world are middle schoolers talking about scholarships? Melissa, that's only for high schoolers. Well, guess what? That is definitely a misconception. Students in the middle school can also apply, not just your seniors in high school, which is what people think. So by giving them this awareness in middle school, it's a really good opportunity for us to build awareness early. And it also gives your child an opportunity to practice. Giving them that opportunity to fill out an application or write an essay is a huge deal that's going to only help them in the long run further down the road in high school. It also would reduce the stress later. They become familiar with what an application looks like, what is expected on an essay, And then it just gives them a habit. It gives them, it's second nature to them to just apply and make time for that, which is such a win, parents, when they get to high school, because it's not this new thing they have to cram into their schedule. It's already instilled in them to be doing it. So, what are some opportunities that we have here at Young Scholar? I'm gonna let Kyla tell you all about those.
Yes. So thank you so much, Melissa, for that. I just want to quickly highlight one of my favorite parts of the Young Scholars Organization, which is our scholarships for students in grades 6 through 9. So these scholarships are designed to celebrate more than just academics. We really want to recognize students for their creativity, for their leadership, passions, and unique talents. And especially during the summer, they're a great way for students to stay engaged, explore their interest, and work towards something that will be meaningful down the road. So, right now, we have several scholarship opportunities that will be open through the fall, including our Athletic Achievement Scholarship for students involved in sports and leadership, our Environmentalism Award for students passionate about sustainability and making a difference, and our Show Us Your Superpower Scholarship, which encourages students to showcase what makes them uniquely them. So, scholarship funds can be used to support camps, academic programs, creative projects, extracurriculars, or other enrichment opportunities. And the applications are designed to be approachable and student friendly. So, we really encourage families to take a look at those and apply. Because sometimes students don't realize that their hobbies, ideas, or personal experiences can actually become a scholarship opportunity while you're still in middle school. So this is a great chance for them to share their voices and their passions. So I'm going to drop our scholarship page link into the chat so you guys can take a look, and then I'll pass it back to Melissa.
Thanks, Kyla. She kind of said already what I was going to reemphasize, that it's important to take advantage of any opportunity that's presenting themselves to you, because you wouldn't believe how many missed opportunities are out there. And so, with us giving those opportunities to our middle schoolers right off the bat, what a win, right? So, an example of that is one of my senior clients this year won third place in a VFW scholarship. And when she won the award, she was told that she was the only public school student that had applied in our county. And I was so floored by that statistic, right? Like, how can we not have more students applying in a county that had thousands of students, because it was open to all high schoolers, and she was the only one that applied. So again, I emphasize there are so many opportunities out there that you don't want to miss out on, because your chances of winning would be higher. So again, why would we give students this opportunity, or why would we encourage them to do scholarships? It's just asking them, what can we do now? Let's just try one or two small opportunities. Let's just give it a try applying for the young scholars. Maybe it's one of them really sounded good to you, or you knew right away, yep, that's the one I qualify for. Give it a shot. Why not? What do you got to lose, right? And alongside of doing scholarships, I would encourage you guys to create a simple list of your activities and your achievements. So students, create a spreadsheet, write down all the activities, volunteer opportunities you come across, and start making sure you write them down, because you're going to really want to see that list when you come to high school for various reasons, whether it's scholarships or it's for your college admissions applications. So just keeping a list is super helpful. And we also just want to remember that we are participating at this age. It's not always about winning, but it's just practicing. And the better that you will become for high school and applying for scholarships, which ultimately is another win. So the sample balance schedule, I hope, leaves you tonight with just a kind of a wrap-up slide of what we've just talked about. So an example week might contain 2 to 3 structured days, and inside those structured days, I'd encourage your son or daughter to come up with an activity or some volunteering. Those, again, would be great opportunities for them to have a say in or choose. And remember, we're doing 2 to 3 light and short academic sessions during the week, and we're building in some rest days to protect our downtime. So I would encourage you to write it out as a family, maybe make a calendar, keep it visible, because that comes with accountability and intentionality. And I also would love to just put in your view, remember to be flexible. If grandma calls up and says, "Hey, I'm stopping over for a visit," then stop everything and do that visit with grandma. It's totally worth it. And this stuff can wait. So just be mindful and be flexible that written plan might not work every single day. And that's okay. What you do want to avoid is overscheduling, though. Let's make sure that every day is not overdone, where we're getting them up at 8 and we're working till 4 on different stuff or going places. Again, it's going to be exhaustion at the end of the summer. That's not worth it. We also want to avoid letting the entire summer go unstructured. So it's important, again, just make a little plan, see if it works, because that's going to help with that transition back into school. We also don't want to force activities without the buy-in. Again, it's super important that they're part of that discussion and they're making it known what they want to do and be involved in. And also, don't get on social, let me try that again. Don't get on social media and compare your child to others. It's so easy to see what your friends are doing or other family members and say, oh, we're missing out or we're not doing enough. It's not worth it, families. Don't compare your child to others. It's not worth it. So I've also included on this slide a template that I thought would be super helpful. Kind of gives you some ideas and some examples of each category and how to map it all out. So Kyla's going to put that template in the chat for you to grab, and it's also going to be in the slide deck linked when you receive that via email. So as we wrap up our time together, I just wanted to give you a few short takeaways to just keep on the cusp of your planning and talking through your son or daughter after this webinar. So the first thing I would say is remember, use short and consistent rule, okay? 20 to 30 minutes of academics, 2 to 3 times a week is all you really need this summer if done consistently. And it's much more effective than doing those occasional long sessions. The second thing I'll leave you with is let your child choose. Again, within limits, you might give them 2 to 3 options to help them make that decision, but would you consider ultimately letting them choose? Remember, choice in the matter becomes ownership and follow through with them. So that's a win. The third thing I'll leave you with is start small and adjust. So don't plan your entire summer tonight. Don't do it tomorrow either. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. So I'd encourage you maybe to plan out the next week or the first 2 weeks after this webinar and then just tweak it. Make sure it works for your family. And lastly, I'll leave with you, prioritize your balance. So there's our key word of the night, balance. You're going to find some weeks are going to lean more towards rest, and that's okay. And then you might have another week where you're like, wow, we really got a lot done and we were very productive. That's great. But the goal is to be consistent. It's not to be perfect, and it's going to bring such joy and such worth to your summer when you look back and you see that balance. So I'll leave you with this last thought. Summer doesn't need to be packed to be productive. It just needs to be intentional. Thank you, Kyla, for having me again to share these thoughts with the families.
Absolutely. Thank you for always bringing your knowledge and your guidance to help us with our middle school family. So we do have a couple of questions in our Q&A. So
Okay.
the first one is from Jarima. She says, my daughter is a gifted student, all grades above 95 since elementary school. She is a rising seventh grader. How can I motivate her since she just throws her grades in my face? Should I just let her be?
I think again, it's balance, right? So, of course, let her be, if you will, I'll use your words, but I'd also encourage her to be challenged. So, let's have that conversation with her and maybe go to the store and find something that interests her that's academically challenged to her. Maybe it's a book that's at a higher level, or maybe it's a hobby that challenges her, like in the STEM category or something like that. I would definitely not leave her be, but I'd also ask her, include her in the conversation and say, what interests you? What do you want to become better at so you're not bored this summer? Because that's another thing. We don't want our kiddos to be bored.
Absolutely. And then our second question is from Tiffany. Are those scholarships able to be held onto for college? Okay, so I can answer this question. So whenever you win a scholarship from Young Scholars, the money is paid out directly to the family. So whatever you decide to do with those funds, for your student, you get to choose to do. So you can absolutely hold those funds until college or, use them towards a program or extracurricular activity. It's up to you. But the scholarships are paid out directly to the family once it is won.
And I'll add, Kyla, that is typical of most scholarships. It doesn't matter what grade they earn it in, they just can hang on to it. A lot of times they will write a check to the student, and then the student just needs to take it in college, of course, to the financial aid office, and it gets transferred right away. But very easy process.
Awesome. And then we have another question here. So, if a student only commits to one activity this summer, what would you recommend?
I don't know if they're asking academic activity or like a hobby or one of those activities. Again, I go back to it's important. These kids have a voice, and I think it's super important to ask them, is it something new they want to try, or is it an old thing they want to make better? I love using like the rec centers around us or our city has like programming over the summer. So that would be something I would encourage them to do. Because there again, it could be a class that happens once a week, like art class or dance class or something like that. So again, I do emphasize sticking with one thing, but it's also an opportunity to try multiple things if they're up for it.
Mm, absolutely. And then last question for the evening. What are some low stress ways to keep students socially engaged during the break?
Mm. I would love to have them invite friends over if you're comfortable with that, mom and dad. Giving them an opportunity to just hang out and be kids, right? I love encouraging students to go outside, whether that's the pool or it's just being outside playing a sport or something in the yard. Or could you come up with a field trip? And I don't want that to be stress on mom and dad because of having to get there in hours and is it going to rain, things like that. But it's always great to do something like that as well, that where they can explore something new. There's so much to do around us that we don't realize that there's little day trips you can do, or even just a couple of hours that you can look up on the internet and find to do. Some historical, some maybe related to like a movie or a TV show you've watched. You'd be surprised what's out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering those questions live from our
Yeah.
audience. I really hope that you guys enjoyed the knowledge and takeaways from Melissa. Um, if you could go to the next slide and then we can show the, there we go. Um, So again, a big thanks to our Young Scholar members and families for participating. Thank you to our amazing host, Melissa, for sharing your insights. And we hope that you found today's session very helpful and inspiring as you take steps towards the summertime. And don't forget that this recording will be shared via email so you can revisit any part of today's webinar. We are so glad that you guys are part of the Young Scholars community. Please be sure to fill out that feedback form on the QR code so that we can know how we can make these webinars better for you. Our next webinar will be June 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be talking about the college planning playbook for middle school students and their parents. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.